well-known dealers, and I can take the bottom line is what dealers act as middlemen. I had to work as a teacher to pay for most of this and my family and everything else. So you've got people who do this full time who are hunting props down. It's sometimes irritating with the price markups are massive, but then the other time is you're paying for them to go and hunt them out and find them. So this is a class. I know where this arm came from. This came from a certain person who had worked on Doctor Who then the dealer I got it from that person, and then I got it from here. I mean, without doubt, I would never have sourced all these objects without dealers having done that. The problem I find now is that the prices are going so high, they're becoming prohibitive. I mean, this is really a not-for-profit museum, so it's not earning a massive income. I'm doing it out of love. I still do work, so I can't plough in thousands and thousands of pounds. I just haven't got that sort of income. I mean, probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I started collecting original pieces, it was between friends, it was between collectors. We'd gone to auctions, we were collecting and exchanging or paying, I mean, to be honest, the fairest way of buying a prop is on eBay, because that's the open market. So if everything's come on eBay, that's always good news for the general Joe public, because or not, they can still reach silly money. I mean, one prop I put on a bid on recently went for silly money, and it went out of my out. But everyone's had a go at that. Do you know what I mean? Once things are in closed hands, it's then a quiet private haggle, which is difficult, Now, but I've been in a very fortunate position with the museum that I haven't had to do as much haggling. I've had a lot of donations recently, because people, I think, recognise that I am struggling. I'm not struggling, but I'm trying very hard to keep this place open, running, accessible, and they realise I'm doing it. I'm not, I accept at my age now, I'm on borrowed time to a degree. Hopefully, I don't know when that is, but it's not like when I was younger and I felt I had forever. I'm going to be looking after this hopefully for a decade or two, and hopefully keep it running. And I'll retire and do this. So when I finally quit teaching altogether, and so I think people recognise that is what I'm doing, and I'm not doing it to just sit there online and go every so often put a picture on with, look what I've got, folks. It's not about that. It's about keeping it. You know what I mean? And I ceased getting joy from just having a room full of it many years ago. There was no point. To some degree, do you know what I mean? It's like, to me, walking into a collection room, after a while, it's stuff. And if you see it every day, it's just stuff. The joy comes from people like you guys coming, and we talk about it and get excited about it, and that's where the pleasure comes from now. It's not about, honestly, if I wasn't doing the museum, I would flog it, or try to get it to a good home, because I couldn't, I love doing art and things like that, and it's just not the same. I love the act of, to me, having a collection, it's what you're going to do with a collection. I see a lot of collectors who are piling on big amounts of items, it's like, okay, that's okay, but what you're doing with it? To me, there's got to be some end game with it's like what you're doing. You're making Daleks, and you make all these props, and you make films with them. And I can totally get that. I totally get what you're doing, because I would love to do that as well. And I get that there's that end point. If you ask me now to build another Dalek, I've built 4 now, over the years of different ones. I've got no desire to build a Dalek, but I would if I had a purpose for it. If you said, oh, I'm making a film, all right, okay. And it's the same with it. It's like somebody offers me a piece. I've got a very exciting piece coming into the museum soon. I've got a very exciting piece coming in, which I've told you guys, and you're keeping private about it, because it's a funny little piece, and it's the sort of thing that Joe Public will just go, what? But you guys and me will go, whoa! And things like that has to be shared. I wouldn't be interested. If it was just going to stick in my room upstairs, it's what is the point? What is the point? It's like that Silurian foot. I stick that upstairs. Okay. Couple of years time, 2 years time, 3 years time. Why is that point? Just to go online every day and go, hey, look guys, look what I've got. It's pointless now. And I think the fact is, you come in, you see it with fresh eyes, and that's lovely. So that's what the point of this is all is. And basically, so I've got a new piece coming in, and I'm excited about the new piece because I'm going to put a display, and it's going to go in here. There's a clue because it's positioned where it is, because it's chronological. Basically, I'm excited because I know you guys will get excited about it as well, and we'll all be able to have a look at this and also look after them. So I do spend, get out, wasp. I get out. It's nice to, you're protecting them and making sure they don't deteriorate any further, which is the other thing. Moving on.
I really like your little models that you've got.
Oh, these are the Harlequins. These were
so well done.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, bless you. Well, that was me trying to make a mini exhibition when I never thought in a million years I'd ever get a donation. Yeah, these are the sort of pieces I really like. This is Bedwyr Gullidge, who wrote the exhibitions book, donated this rather nice outler knife, little simple prop from Full Circle. What I'm trying to do at the museum is get an object from as many stories as possible. So in other words, an object to represent each story. So it's about, you know, it could be just like that. That's fine. I've now got something from Full Circle. It doesn't have to be a full marshmallow or, you know, Starliner or something. And it's just a little interesting object from each thing. It could be a script page, it could be a monster head, or whatever. But it's to tell a narrative. I love chronology and I love the narrative. So, and the one thing that annoys me is that, as you possibly noticed, I've had to swap. It goes season 12, 13, and then 17. Which is a pain in the bum and I hate it, you know. So I've got 15, 16 over around the corner, and that's because of rodents. The costumes that were from season 15 and 16 are mice, love them, because you've got sheepskin and all this. So I've had to separate them, but my sort of ADHD autistic brain hates it. So it's like Bruno Morbius, Nightmare of Eden. And it's like, I hate it, but there's just certain things that you just, with the limited space I have, and obviously I've just had to, you've got to obviously protect the props. So I had to reseal the floor, put metal copper meshing around the floor and everything. It was a big job. That's what people don't realise, right? When they say, I can do a museum, there's a load of people say, I'll do a museum. It's like, well, good luck, off you pop, because at the end of the day, to do a good job, it's a lot of work. You know, it's one thing collecting things. It's great fun collecting things, but I'm just looking at a piece now. This is what happens. I start looking at things. I'm thinking, is that changed? Is that done? Anyway, the next thing is actually building a safe structure and displaying it all. And of course, I've had to build all the displays myself. I've had to do the plaques myself, and it has been years of work to get it like this. And people will say it's very small, but I mean that's as much as I could afford. I know, like. The National Film and Space one in Milton Keynes is huge. It's a big area, and it'd be great to have an area like that. But ultimately, what I like about this is I can manage it. We managed to get through lockdown because I live above it. If I'd had a separate building, it would have closed. You know, there's no way I could have kept that going. But it would be lovely to have that sort of floor space. But at the same time, there's something quaint about the cellar. You know, that is Roger Dilley doing the Dalek and Davros and Sideman, and he's amazing. He did all these especially for the museum. It's great. So thank you, Roger. They're fabulous. Every day I listen to you, darling. Every bloody day. No, every day I listen to your voices. Yeah. Right, anyway, so here we go round again. Been putting that gun down slowly together in bits over years. I started off with just like an arm section. A lot of these costumes is you are putting them together slowly, like the Argolan's another one. Just been slowly putting them together. They're not instant, you know, you gather bits over the time. Meandering through here, there's also, folks, quite a lot of Blake 7 reuse. People say, have you got anything from Blake 7? Yes, that's from Blake 7. Well, that Pluto guard tablet was used in Blake 7. So was this Pirate Planet guard jacket was used in Blake 7. So was the Galset crew gun round the corner was Callie's gun. And one of my favourite, if we just scuttle through here a second. If we scuttle through here, folks. Coming through. Ooh, yes. Oh yes, but right through. Right through. Yeah. We've penetrated the core. Right now, here, this costume here. Let us have a look. The Shimmeron Guard. Now this was lovely. Again, this came to me. This was an interesting one. This is a Scorpio spacesuit from one of the main 7 hero costumes from Blake 7, and it was used. And when I got this, the Shimmeron Soldier, I would say, is notable for being a bit of a naff monster. I would say. I don't think it's right. It's everyone's favourite. But what they did was, and I remember getting this costume to restore, and it wasn't in this condition. It was losing several layers of paint, and it was quite sticky. But I just thought, God, this is a well-made costume. You know, for a really, to be honest, 2-minute monster. And of course, I then realised a guy, Gary Holland, who's a very noted Blake 7 costume collector, went, Neil, I hope you're going to get the green paint off because it's a Scorpio suit. And I went, oh gosh, that's why it was a principal actor costume, and they've just sprayed it green. Now the answer, the bottom line is Gary's taken his right down to the silver, and he's got the helmet as well, the space helmet for Blake 7. Now I just said to Gary, I'm going to leave it because to me, in this museum, this is part of its history, its story, is that it ended up green and it's original. And so all I did was touch up the paint and cover it in resins and stuff to stop it all cracking. And then the face was an interesting one because a guy called Nigel Peaver very kindly donated this helmet. He just had the helmet and he went, look, I want you to have that to complete it, which was amazing. I'm pretty certain that the helmet itself is a Thal Trooper costume, Thal helmet, which they've stuck the leather strips on. But the face itself, I sculpted, and it was a good example is because I remember the makeup girls were getting a lot of flack. John Nathan Turner famously, when they turned up on set, he just went, what the F is that? You know, because they looked really quite poor. But again, it was like, I think they probably had under 24 hours to do something. And so what they did apparently in the originals was take a draconian mask, to glue it to the actor's face, and then just smeared latex on and then sprayed the whole face green. There you go, monster. And they did look really poor. So what I did was, because I had the baby, which Stephen Mansfield's and Sumo's baby, I thought, right, if I've got the time, if I age it and try and sort of follow some of the details of the adult one that you can see, but meld that into it, and so I sort of give it the sort of justice it deserved, and that was why I did that, and I enjoyed doing that a lot. And then I had some nice compliments about that, which was good, because I thought, so if it had the time, and I think the makeup girls got a lot of flack, because it's like you can only do what you can do. If you get given, that's what people forget. It's like the same with Andrew's work. You know, I know Andrew's artwork when it's at its peak, and when it's sometimes a bit more quick, it's just because he hasn't got as much time. You know, and it's that thing. You know, it's all about time and energy. And of course, we've got Broton here. This has been loaned by Mike Tucker. Very kind of Mike to when Cardiff closed. Colin Mapson. I had no idea. Colin Mapson had worked uncredited making the Zygons for Terror the Zygons. So he got Colin to restore the Broton costume, and I actually think Mike does as well. When it was put on in Cardiff, it was again this sort of the new way of displaying things. It's very much sort of classic, the English heritage style, which is bright lights, you know. And these costumes were meant to be lit. They were meant to be lit. And when you went to the original Blackpools, they were lit like this. And you know, to me, Zygon's red and green. It's that red and green spaceship. So Mike was pleased when he saw it lit. He went, yes, that's it. Because it just doesn't look as good in daylight. It just doesn't. I think they're not meant to be under bright lights. And so I think to get them, you know, so that's why this, I think he looks better here than he did at Cardiff, just because he was just in bright natural light, and you can see all the imperfections. Whereas here it just, you know, I think he looks fantastic. I mean, obviously this will probably have to go back to Mike at some point, but we've been very lucky to have it. And if Mike sees this, thank you so much, because it's brought a lot of people a lot of happiness seeing him here. And he's again, I built this area just for him because this wasn't here. So I had to extend this bit, which is why it's got a bit tighter here, but it meant that I could get these guys in. And what I will put, I've got some monsters to put in here, and they're canonical, they're chronologically correct. They're from Mind Warp, and I've got a Vervoid that I'm working on as well, so they'll go in there. Yeah, so that's quite nice because I've got like the Megarian, Hyperion thing, and then I thought I never thought I'd get a Vervoid, but I've got a really bad condition Vervoid, which needs a lot of sculpting work, but I'll do it now. And that would be nice actually to get that little collection, you know, because I actually like Trial. I enjoy Trial a lot. So yeah.
I love the Vervoid story.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, I love the one they've remade. The new editor of it's good.
Oh yeah, yes.
It's really cool.
It's a shame.
Yeah. And this again we've got some. Again, now this is an interesting piece. This was in Longleat. These were made for Longleat and Blackpool, the original exhibition, the cane things. And I got the hounds direct from Sumo herself. And again, it's just a lovely piece. And again, the original cane head was wax and you know, doesn't exist in that form. The original head does exist still, but it was lovely because that again is the most viewed cane by the public in terms of that's the photograph prop, and it did have the original costume. I think the BBC obviously took the costume back. It'd be great to have the costume with it, but it's nice to have. Really, that's the sort of core image. So it's really nice.
You will obey the darling.
Hey. Right, what do you want next? Hello. Right, I'll tell you what's interesting. What we have here, I'm just pleased with this. I'm just pleased with this because this is, you know, a surviving cheetah person costume, and I really grow to reappreciate the Sylvester McCoy time. I sort of really enjoy them now. And initially I was a bit when I was sort of a teenager, but now I really enjoy them. The Cheetah People. This again is a classic example of BBC not loving and not looking at something that was preventable. Basically all the prosthetics that were on the face were either glued to really bad mannequins or just not looked after. And this, when I got all this, the face was just crumbled dust. That's all that was left. So I had to sculpt in. I got a mannequin head, carved it out and re-sculpted the face, put fox eyes in, which was the nearest I could find. Glass eyes make them look really good, I think. And then had to re-sculpt the whole thing, and I just like had to sculpt the teeth, and it was a pain because it didn't look right until it was all together, and so I kept losing faith in it. I thought, can I do this? But I actually think now it probably looks, I think, closer to what was on screen than the ones that are surviving still, because the couple I've seen, the prosthetics are so worn, and the makeup, and they've been put on mannequins that weren't cast for, so they end up looking sunken and a bit weird and a bit sad. So I think that's now, when I look at the picture, I think it is close. I mean, and again, this is a good example of a prop where it's worth doing the work because there's so much left. You know, bottom line, the face of course is key to that costume, but there's so much of it that to not do something with that face would have been a great shame, I think. And there's some props which have disgusted me, I think, over the beer, where you've got the point where they're so degraded, you get to a point where actually there's more of it's more of a sculpt than the prop, and at that point I draw a line. I think maybe at that point you should just display the parts and explain what they are with a photograph, rather than just resculpt. To me it just becomes a new sculpture, not the thing. Other interesting pieces in here. We have quite well known. This was in David Howe's book, The Monster book, and I think it was in possibly there's been a few behind the scenes book. I think it's in Ace, Sophie and Mike Tucker's book. This is the prototype Hemivore, plaster bust, very fragile. I've had to repair it a few times with filler and things, but it's really lovely to see. This was on John Nathan Turner's mantelpiece famously for years because he thought it was very rude that he wouldn't let it be used. I don't think it's that. I'll be honest. I think you've got to be quite a dearth of mind to see that, but I just think it looks very much like it's a Cenobite and the Fluke Man from the X-Files prior to that appearing, and I actually think that would have been a terrifying monster. I think it would have been a really good one.
It's a bit like Devon Gordon and Stranger Things.
Yeah. I just think it's a good design. Now that's not saying I don't like. What's nice is I've got this one over here. What I'm thinking of doing, folks, is putting this bust actually in front of here. I'm going to put a bit of new series, I think, in here a little bit, and I'm thinking of putting that head, move him back a little bit and putting the head in there so you can compare the two faces, which would be quite nice. But I mean, I think Steve Mansfield and Sue Moore did those, and they're bloody good. It's a tough call. That would have been interesting to see what they'd have done with that. And again, with the animatronics that were coming up, they could have probably pulled that off because there was. And the other, I love this. This is a Mike Tucker model. I did have the full train. Annoyingly, I sold bits just to get other props in. Again, when I sell items, it's because if I've already got something from a story, to get something to represent another story, I'll try and weigh up the value to the visitor of what the piece is. So it's like the other carriages were identical virtually to that. So it was like, well, okay, do I have 3 carriages and say not a cane head? Because I can't, I'm just not money bag, so I can't just sort of think. They're the sort of decisions I have to make, which are a pain. But I think that's a nice representation, and it's interesting to show you the sort of behind the scenes work that you didn't see, that you didn't really. I was never aware that there was a future train that was made for Dimensions in Time.
I assumed that it was a 2D drawing.
Yes, I did.
A hand drawing or something like that, painting, then just dragged across the screen to get effect.
Yeah, and when you see it, it's just lovely to have. And again, you see the amount of work that's gone into just that model for that split scene is lovely. I love as well Andrew Scaletics, you probably gather. I love his artwork, and we've got some nice pieces here. I love the fact Andrew's quite frequently he'll send me rough drawings, because when I teach, I sometimes show children these to show them that when I teach art, look kids, you don't just get to the final image. And a lot of artists chuck out their sketches because they don't want you to see them. So it's really lovely to see Andrew's process, and I've done many lessons. If Andrew's watching this, he probably isn't, but if he is, I've done many lessons where I've used Andrew's examples to say, look, you've got a beautiful finished hand piece of work, but it just doesn't get there instantly. It's a stage by stage drawing. There's another drawing that's interesting I'll show you, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Now this is my other favourite Who artist, And that is Mr. Colin Howard, who I think is a rather spectacular Who artist. So this is, yes, we're keeping going, folks. You might need to open that door because we're going to the TARDIS console drawing from the Macro Terra animation. I think this is, we're going to start here. This is it. Right. So we got here. Managed to get this from Colin Howard. Colin is a lovely, lovely guy, an amazing artist. Again, stunning artist. Can I just say something, guys? Why people like Colin and Andrew weren't used for something like that, the recent Doctor Who and the Daleks poster art covers? Because what we got was okay, but I just think, Colin's work, and there's just some amazing artists. And so people like, Pete Wallbank's another one. He's stunning. There's his Buck Rogers painting in there. I just think, why aren't they being used? You know, because anyway, never mind. Just a thought. This is a lovely piece. This is the console artwork that hand painted by Colin, and it's actually appeared on screen, and that's it on screen in the Macro Terra animation. And the Macro Terra animation is my favourite, I think, animated adaptation. I think it's really good, and I think the world building they sort of added to it, I think, was really nice. And what Colin also gave me was, this is the plan which shows you where the animated layers and extra elements were going to go on, and the screen there, the console screen, and these were all added on. And again, the console was left because it was added digitally, and the shadows were, and I know I spoke to Rob Ritchie about this, and he said he had to actually fold this model a little bit more. It wasn't quite there, so he had to just digitally fold it and map it onto things. So there's such a lot of work that's gone into doing that little scene. So I think that's a lovely example of the work that's gone into the animated episodes. Quite something. This is one of my favourite. Again, I love this painting in the Cybermen book when I got it way back. I think I got the Cybermen book early 90s when I got my copy, and I love this painting because it was like the Cyber leader. It was like, you could tell from the texturing, it had that feel of Earthshock taking on, and it was Andrew's take. One of the reasons I love Andrew's artwork is, again, he takes. He's imaginative. There's a lot of Doctor Who art at the minute is like our class is the photo montage floating heads. So you've got photographs you recognise, people cut them out digitally and mash them together and go, I'm an amazing artist. Now, I'm not saying they're not, but to me, I want to see elements that are not just available from photographs, because I can recognise all the photo elements, and I do it for my magazine, for the museum magazine. It's quick to do, so I have to, because I haven't got time to do this sort of work. But what's lovely about Andrew and Colin and all these great artists is that they use their imagination. You know, this is not Photoshop, this is not a photograph composited, this is from somebody's mind, and that I love. And that to me is the true artist, for me, not just a digitally arranging thing. And I mean, you can see that, this is the work. There's no undo button, If Andrew makes a mistake, you've got to incorporate it into the picture. You've got to just work with it. And I love the fact that, he's planned the elements and bits and bobs. I just love that.
On a side note, have you seen the 30th anniversary 1993 calendar they made? Because I have that, and the artwork in there is stunning. All
Andrew's work.
Not just Andrew's, there's several other artists. But
Yes.
they're all reinterpretations.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Where there's a Silurian one where they're not screen accurate, but they're a reinterpretation, and they like zapping gorillas.
Yes, I know, it's Colin Howard's
There you
work.
go.
Yeah.
It's things like that where even though that's not this year anymore, that was the calendar did actually work for last year. Doesn't work for this year. I don't care. I've started the calendar again because I can look at the artwork and it's just beautiful.
Yes, I agree. Well, coming on round the corner here, we've got basically, these are sort of like the big monster restorations. This represents years of my life. Pteroleptil was the biggest one. The arms didn't exist. They'd been put in a different lot. The BBC had sold them off wrong. They'd put the Posican arms in with this. I did put an appeal out for the arms to see if I could get them, but they're gone. So basically I had to sculpt the two arms, and the head here, that's the head. The head that came with that lot was the green leader, which obviously looked red because it had been in the fire, so it was discoloured. But when I put that on the top of there, it just didn't look right. So I eventually managed to get an original casting from this bit of the face. I could have sculpted it, but again, if you can get the original mould, you want the original. For this is what this is about. It's not about my ego as a sculptor. It's about what's the best thing to make the most accurate representation. So basically what I then did was, from about the cast's quite shallow, so everything else around I had to sculpt by hand, and again just use reference photos, and that took shoot all those frills and everything. I had to build on the original shoulders and build up, and then the groins in the trousers had gone, so they were just like the legs, so I had to build up and reattach. So I had to build a framework and then sculpt on, so that was a huge amount of work, but I'm very pleased with it, and I'm glad I separated the green head away from the red, because I think that was the animatronic one. And again, at the time I left that white so you could see which bits I'd added, but I think in retrospect I wouldn't mind painting it now, you know, but it was just to say, look, that's not the original, that's the original bit. But again, a lot of work in that. And we're coming along here. This was a vast amount of work, because what this had been put on a mechanized frame for Longleat, and the frame was really too big for the costume, and it was rough wood. It wasn't even finished wood, it was rough saw, you know, rough wood, and it was tearing the costume and pulling, and you see the cracks in the costume are all because it had been stretched, and then it sort of lurched forward and stuff on like a motorcycle, you know, like a bike chain mechanism. So the abuse this poor lad had taken. So it then, you know, been stunted. Its legs had been shortened to go in Llangollen, which had low ceilings. So then, by the time I got it, I wanted it at Bonhams when it came up for sale. I was outbid on him, and a guy got him, bless him, who then, well, he'd only got one arm by that point. I'd offered to try and repair it years ago. And by the time I got it, it was a year after Bonhams. I never thought I'd see it again. And I'd always had a soft spot for the Garm. I love the Garm. I like the story. And the other arm had gone because the guy put it in like a hot prefab unit, and it had just been the temperature going up, down, up, down, up, down. The rubber just shredded. The arms here, the hands here, that's the last bit of any of the arm pieces. That's the most fragile item in here. If you pick it up, it literally comes away. So I've filled it with foam, and I've put resin. Drenched it in resin to try and keep it together, and then just leave it, and I'll put a plaque in it at some point. So I had to build a new frame. It's like a wicker man, giant frame for the Garm. I got it back to its height because it was like stunted, so I had to build a brand new. It was a big job, and then again I managed to get it so the ears measured so they just fit between the beams, and so he has to sit between two beams in the museum. But I think he's worth it, and I think when Steve Gallagher came and visited, and he came and saw this, he said, oh, he looks like he did on set, you know, he's the right height and everything, so that was really lovely. And then the other big resto, well, two big restorations. This was a big job, Mestor. What I've got with Mestor is that's the original arm on that to our right here, and there's a gap. It had been put onto the mannequin upside down, so it was the wrong way. And also, you probably noticed the hands are pointing down, and what I wish I'd done, I wish I'd put them up, because when you generally see Mestor, his hands are up. But anyway, I had to rotate the hand, cut the hand off, rotate, reset it. Then this arm to our left, this had just about gone. I've still got it, but it was just the rubber had gone, so it was just like Hessian. So I managed, just by a pure fluke, there was an auction, again, stuff came back from New Zealand, and there was an arm. There was a Mestor arm. Now, it maybe isn't Mestor's, it's maybe one of the other, you know, it was under as Mestor in the, I think it was one of the other costume gloves. And so I managed to get a replacement arm, because I was going to have to resculpt the hand to repair, and I got a really good condition hand. So that's an original piece. So I had to drill out the other mannequin arm, because it was all being set, refix that in. Then I covered the whole thing in resin, because again the surface was coming away. There's fiberglass in the carapace, that was good, because that gave me something to work on. And then the head itself, this is like a rubber balaclava, but the face mask was really in bad shape. It was there, but again, it had been in the fire, so it was discoloured and it was coming away. And basically I re-sculpted kind of all the points, you know, the points around the mouth, the nose. And then recently I had a donation of 2 period casts from the production, which are really nice, and I haven't displayed them well yet, because what's nice is it's got Edwin Richfield's chin still in the mould there, and it's got Edwin Richfield's face in the upper half of the mould at the bottom. And that really is a really good example, you know, it's a real opportunity to show the mask making process. So I mean, and there's a guy as well, Barry Smith, very kindly contacted me. He made the costume, he didn't make the mask, and he lives in the States now, and he sent me some Polaroids he took of the time of the costume. And Mestor's costume's pretty impressive when you see it being made. It's just, again, how it was used and stuff. But actually when you see it being made, it's rather lovely. The tail goes really long out the back. It's just really good. It's just, I think, how they kind of used it wasn't to its full potential, perhaps. Again, we've got a 3 this is an Earthshock Cyberman. And what we've got, a lot of research on this one as well. It was used in all, 5 Doctors. It was then a silver cyber. It was worn by Roger Pope, and it was used in the Telos sequences first, silver. It was then sprayed black for the sewer scenes, which came at the end of the production. And again, it's just been scrumpled up ever since, once production ended. And I got it from a guy who worked on the show of that one. And I basically had to, instead of putting rubber back on to repair it, I knew if I put rubber on like they did in the original, the latex and copy decks, it would just be back to square one within a couple of years, you know what I mean? 10 years and we'd be back to square one. So I did resin it, and it's solidified everything nicely. So it'll never come off the mannequin, but it's solid, and there's no deterioration since. And then I repainted the suit and highlighted it a little bit, and everything else is original and untouched. The head was an original head which was damaged. The head, sorry, is not the Cyber Scout head, but it was an original head that was worked on. But the chest, gloves, everything else is all original. The head I got years before, in a bad way, and I had to do, I put the clear mouthpiece on, which somebody's, gone, it's not the original because it's not the clear mouthpiece. No, the mouthpiece had long gone. I left it clear because I just like the clear mouthpieces. I just thought they were cool, I could have sprayed it black, but I just thought, this suit here is a little bit annoying, right? This is the sort of, right, here's a few decisions I've had to make in my life, right, in this museum. A dealer got Ichthar's complete bodysuit and cut it up into 8 sections. And I've actually got a 4th bit upstairs, but I managed to collect enough to put that together. I then, up until about a few months ago, I had the chest piece, the fiberglass chest. Now, and you probably noticed I haven't got it. Now, what I did was I did a deal with another dealer, basically had the mandrel head, and what I had to do, it's very difficult because we did a swap. And what I ended up thinking was, I felt the mandrel head in the space I've got was a more effective use of the space, and I thought that was a nice thing to have. Whereas the chest was big and deep, it was very big, and I was thinking, well, where am I realistically going to put it? And I just felt that it was, again, ideally you'd keep them both, but ultimately I felt that for the museum, I thought the mandrel head. I love Nightmare in Eden. I think it's a fun story, and I just thought that was but that's a sort of tough call. You've got to make it times. But and I had a bit of Ichthar's suit. It would have been nice to have that, but that's a classic case of a dealer cut up. There's dealers like Matt Doe, who does the little reliquary cards. Now he's very much he takes bits that have fallen off that I've told you about. He doesn't cut the originals. He basically, you always get bits that drop off and you cannot put them back on. So I've given him bits that have fallen off for his cards, because it's quite nice if people want a little bit. You know what I mean? That's my son running around upstairs. So basically, but that's a question where someone's just got a costume and butchered it, and it's this is a butchered costume by the BBC. This is another Earthshock Cyberman suit, which was used at Longley. It was cut in half in the early days of the exhibition. I suspect it was heavily butchered from pyrotechnic stuff, and then it was on display. The other half was in Blackpool too for ages. And anyway, I got this half, the other half of it, and then put it in there. And I had this before. I had the Cyber Scout, but it's just nice to have another one. It's silver. You can see the original. And again, it's resined and protected. So it's, again, there's been no deterioration. When I've done the sort of moisturising and repair, there's no visible deterioration. Whereas masks that I haven't had, they're just dying. And it's like, just give them to me. And I'll fix them and stick, just preserve them. Otherwise they go. Like the Outer Limits is the key thing, that, because people were just, it was a public auction way back in the late 60s. And there's just kids going to them and buying their props, and they've gone. Just dust, it's like, oh, these classic monsters have gone. Anyway.
But this does bring us to the end, because the very last piece we have here is from Blake 7, which is from season 4 of Blake 7, which is Homic's costume and the guard jacket. They are from series 4 and from series 3, these two separate uniforms. And apart from, there are a few stills from the animated cartoons. That brings us to the end of the Johnny Who tour of Neil Cole's fantastically wonderful museum. Even though I say that standing inside something where you can't see the top of my head because it is a very low ceiling. But thank you very much for joining us for a little wander around memory lane, thinking about some of the greatest films, some things that have inspired us, some things that have meant so much to us, and some things which have just been a good laugh. But thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And of course, we can't forget about the one and only Alan Dale Dalek, who unfortunately lost his shed. So here he is, in a bag, with his manipulator arm pushed inside, his gun protruding out, and unfortunately a tear where the rain can get in, and he's feeling a bit sorry for himself, but he is one of the reasons that the museum became so famous. So, well done, Dalek. Well done.
Hello, my name's Betty, and I'm so happy. Ever so happy. Happy, 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 happy.